Darts are the triangular shapes that are in our fabric pattern pieces. So what we're going to do is we need to transfer these stitching lines, which are the solid lines that make the triangular shape, onto the fabric so that they can be a guide for us to actually stitch those triangular wedges in our fabric. Darts actually take a two-piece flat dimensional piece of fabric and will make it into a three-dimensional shape that will fit the body. So to do that, we need tracing paper, which comes in packages like this, and we need our tracing wheel. This is our actual tracing paper. It is colored on one side and usually neutral on the other. We want to fold it so that we have colored pieces on both sides. So fold your tracing paper in half. Then we're going to lift our pattern piece up and get to the layer in between our fabrics to the wrong side. We want to place our tracing paper inside between the two layers of fabric on the wrong side. We're going to take our tracing wheel and trace the lines onto the fabric. So we want to just press hard, apply some pressure. It's going to take pressure to get the tracing paper to actually transfer, and you follow the lines of the darts. We're going to do that for both darts. Okay. Then the dots at the end of the triangle show us where the dart should end. I like to come across and create a straight line in the middle of those darts to show the end. So now that I've traced, you should be able to see the four triangles, which are the four dots that are going to make the flat piece of fabric fit the bodice. So now to be ready to sew a dart, we're going to fold the dart right side together, lining up the stitching line. So I have a stitching line here and a stitching line here. The way that we're going to line that up is to take a pin, and we're going to stick the pin through the stitching line, and when it comes out on the other side, we want to make sure that the pin goes through the stitching line on both sides of the fabric. And we're going to put that pin in place. We're going to fold it so that our triangle stays folded in half with our pins going through the stitching line on both sides of the fabric. Okay. All right, so we have that pin. Now we're ready to actually sew that dart in. So to sew the dart, we're just going to make a plain seam that's going to follow that stitching line. So we want to line our dotted line up with our needle, and we want to leave enough room that we can back stitch. So we're going to start by back stitching, and then we're going to sew following that line that we drew with our tracing paper. And when we get to the pin that's at the end that marks the end of our dart, we're actually just going to sew off the fabric. We're not going to back stitch. We're going to come out, cut a long thread, and do that. We're going to take the pins out, and we still need to secure this end of the dart. But rather than back stitching, we are going to hand tie a knot at the end. Because once we stitch off the fabric, it's too hard to get the back stitch to actually follow the line back smoothly in our stitching. So we're just going to tie 2 to 3 knots at the end of that to tie it off. Then we take our scissors and cut off the extra thread to create our dart. So now we have sewn a triangular wedge in our fabric that looks like a seam on the right side and a triangle on the back. Okay, so we've sewn the 4 darts and now we need to press it, and you can see how it's bringing the the fabric up to a 3-dimensional shape. So any of our darts that are vertical darts, we press those so that the triangular wedge presses towards the center of the garment. So we're going to press those in and get to a nice point where our triangular wedge stops. This one, we're going to iron this way because, again, we want the triangular wedge to point towards the center of the garment. Okay. For anything that is a horizontal dart, we want the triangular wedge to fold down. So we're going to press it so that it folds down from the garment. And then when we flip this over, we have a piece of fabric that is now 3-dimensional to fit the body.